There are moments in life when the noise around you gets loud. The pressure builds and your instincts tell you to act, speak, or defend yourself. But what if the divine strategy is silence? What if God is saying, don't move, don't talk, just trust? In that stillness, power is being built, and in that silence, heaven is speaking louder than words ever could. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. There are moments when the battle isn't yours to fight and the words aren't yours to speak. Life will try to provoke you. People will try to pull you into arguments, into defense mode, into unnecessary warfare. But hear this: silence is not weakness. Silence can be the loudest voice in the room, because silence shows control. Silence reveals confidence. Silence says, I trust God more than I trust my emotion. You don't have to answer every accusation. You don't have to clap back at every insult. You don't have to explain yourself to people who already made up their minds about you. There's a time to speak, but there's also a divine time to stay silent. And when you stay silent under pressure, when you refuse to react, when you wait patiently, something supernatural begins to happen. That's when God steps in and starts speaking for you. Your silence can confuse the enemy. Your silence can cancel the attack. Your silence can cause the weapon formed against you to misfire. Because while they're expecting your reaction, you're choosing revelation. You're choosing faith over frustration. You're choosing peace over panic. And it's in that decision that God begins to work behind the scenes. He begins to turn hearts. He begins to shift outcomes. He begins to open doors you didn't even knock on. But the question is, can you trust him enough to be quiet? Can you remain calm when everything around you is chaotic? Can you shut your mouth and open your spirit? Because sometimes it's in the quiet moments that God is testing your maturity, testing your surrender, testing your alignment with his will. He's asking you to trust his timing, not yours. And if you can stay silent, if you can stay still, you'll watch him speak louder through your life than you ever could with your lips. But here's what most people miss. What happens after the silence? What is God building in the stillness that the world can't see? Let's go deeper. Trust isn't proven when everything is going right. Trust is proven when nothing makes sense. When the plan is blurry. When the prayers seem unanswered. When the door you were sure would open closes. That's when real trust begins. Not in your ability to fix it, not in the people around you, but in the quiet confidence that God knows exactly what he's doing, even when you don't. You see, trust is not a feeling. It's a decision. It's saying, God, I don't understand this, but I still believe you're in control. It's when you wake up to the same storm, but you choose peace. It's when the answers don't come, but you keep showing up. It's when your name is being talked about, your path is being questioned, but you choose not to defend yourself. Because your defender is greater than your enemy. That's trust. But it's not easy, is it? Your emotions want to react. Your pride wants to speak. Your mind wants to know why. But trust says, even if I never know why, I still know who. And that kind of trust only comes from intimacy, from knowing that God is not a man that he should lie, from knowing that he's never failed and he's not going to start now. This is the kind of trust that silences anxiety. The kind of trust that brings rest in the middle of the storm. The kind of trust that says, even if the timeline shifts, even if the vision tarries, even if the pain gets heavier, I will not quit because I trust his heart even when I can't trace his hand. So don't rush to speak. Don't move ahead of him. Don't let fear become your voice. Wait, trust, stay planted, because there's something God is doing in the waiting that's preparing you for what's next, and you can't afford to miss it by reacting too soon. But now here's the deeper question. What's really happening when you're forced to stand still in a battle you can't control? Let's unlock it together. In life, there are battles you're invited to fight, and then there are battles you're instructed to stay out of. Not because you're weak, but because the strategy is different. Sometimes your greatest weapon is your stillness. Not your voice, not your strength, not even your wisdom, but the ability to be still when everything in you wants to react. Stillness doesn't mean doing nothing. It means knowing when to let God take the lead. It's discipline. It's spiritual maturity. It's the kind of strength that says, I could respond. I could fight back, but I won't, because I trust there's a greater outcome being written behind the scenes. And that takes power, because here's what most people miss. Warfare doesn't always require weapons. Sometimes it requires wisdom. Sometimes the enemy wants to pull you into a trap by baiting you into action, wants to exhaust your energy, wants to get you to speak out of timing, move out of alignment, react out of character. But when you stay still, you cancel the enemy's plan before it even begins. It's not easy. Stillness feels like losing. It feels like you're doing nothing while the storm is growing. It feels like weakness. He's working, he's shifting, he's proving not just to the world, but to you that you don't need to fight like everybody else. You don't need to react like everybody else. Your silence is not defeat. It's divine strategy. And the moment you master stillness, you step into a higher level of spiritual authority. You begin to hear clearly. You begin to discern sharply. You begin to walk in confidence because you're no longer moved by noise, you're moved by instruction. But now let me ask you this. What if the delay isn't punishment, but preparation? What if the waiting is the refining you've been praying for? Let's find out. Waiting is one of the hardest things you'll ever have to do, especially when you know what God showed you. You know what He promised. You know what's supposed to happen, but nothing's moving, nothing's changing. The door is still closed. The answer is still delayed. And everything inside you wants to ask, why isn't it happening yet? But what if the wait is the strategy? What if the delay is divine? What if God is saying, I need to build you before I release you? Because there's something about waiting that exposes your posture. Waiting shows if you truly surrender or if you're just trying to control the outcome. Waiting will test your attitude. It will test your patience. It will even test your trust. Because God doesn't operate on your timeline. He operates on His purpose. And when purpose and timing align, nothing can stop it. But when you try to force it too soon, you can delay what was already prepared for you. That's why some doors don't open when you knock. Not because you're not ready for the blessing, but because the blessing isn't ready for you. God is still setting the stage, still moving pieces, still preparing places where your name has already been spoken, but your character has to match the calling. So don't fight the wait. Don't resent it. Don't try to skip the process. If God says wait, it's not rejection, it's protection. It means He's preserving something valuable. It means He's making room for something greater than you imagined. And when the time comes, when the season shifts, it'll happen so fast, you won't have to push, it'll pull you in. But here's the deeper mystery. What's really happening inside of you while you wait? What is God preparing in you before He releases what's around you? Because the next level, it's not just about what you're stepping into, it's about who you've become to handle it. And that changes everything. You've been told that silence means surrender, that if you don't speak, you're weak, that if you don't defend yourself, you'll be destroyed. But the truth is, silence can be the strongest statement you ever make. Because silence isn't always silence. It's strategy. It's wisdom. It's restraint. And sometimes it's warfare. There are battles in life that are not meant to be fought with words, but with presence, with posture, with peace. And when you choose not to react, when you choose not to retaliate, that silence sends a message to the enemy. I'm not shaken. I'm not confused. I know exactly who's fighting for me. And that kind of stillness, that kind of composure, that's not weakness. That's authority. Because anybody can shout, anybody can panic, anybody can react. But it takes a deep confidence, a spiritual maturity to stay calm when your name is under attack, your motives are questioned, your silence is misunderstood. But you stay quiet, not because you're scared, but because you know God speaks louder through vindication than you ever could with explanation. Silence, when led by faith, becomes a weapon. It confuses the enemy. It silences the accuser. It shuts down the trap. Because they were waiting for you to break, waiting for you to respond emotionally, waiting for you to step out of character, but instead, you remain still. You remain focused. You remain grounded. And while you were silent, heaven was speaking. While you were silent, God was shifting. While you were silent, your victory was being written line by line without you having to say a word. But the real question is, how do you know when to stay silent and when to speak? How do you discern the timing of your voice so it carries power, not panic? Because there's a moment coming where your words will matter, but only if they come from the right place. Let's uncover that next. There is a difference between having a voice and having the right timing to use it. Just because you can speak doesn't mean you should. Just because you have something to say doesn't mean now is the moment to say it. Because when your spirit is out of sync with God's timing, even truth can fall flat. Even wisdom can be wasted. There is a moment where silence is more powerful than sound until heaven releases you to speak. Real power is knowing when to hold your words and when to release them. And when you only speak when God speaks through you, your words carry weight. Your words carry life. Your words shift the atmosphere. Not because you're loud, but because you're aligned. But most people miss this. They rush to speak, they rush to defend, they rush to explain, and in doing so, they speak from pain, not purpose. They speak from fear, not faith. But when your voice is governed by the Spirit, not your emotions, your words become a weapon of clarity, not chaos. Sometimes God will shut your mouth on purpose, not to silence you, but to protect your influence. Because if you speak too soon, you can say too much. And if you speak too late, you can miss the moment. But when you only speak what He gives you, at the time He gives it, your voice becomes anointed, appointed, undeniable. It's not about having the right words. It's about having the right release. That's what separates noise from authority. That's what turns a conversation into a divine confrontation. When heaven backs your voice, mountains move, chains break, doors open. But until then, stay silent, stay in position, stay in alignment. And when the moment comes, when God says, "Now speak," you know. Because what comes out of your mouth will carry more than words. It will carry a move. But let's ask the question that few are willing to face. What kind of faith does it take to stay still, stay silent, and still believe the outcome is shifting in your favor? Let's walk into that next. Faith is not proven by how loud you shout. Faith is not in how many scriptures you quote, how many prayers you post, or how boldly you declare. Sometimes the purest form of faith is silence. The kind of faith that doesn't beg, doesn't panic, doesn't question, just believes, just stands, just waits, and still knows God is working. You see, real faith is not always noisy. It's quiet confidence. It's walking through the fire without flinching. It's showing up with peace when there's every reason to be afraid. It's moving forward without a sign, without applause, without confirmation, because something in your spirit already knows it's handled. And let me tell you, that kind of faith moves mountains. That kind of faith shifts atmospheres. That kind of faith makes the enemy nervous. Because while the world waits for you to break, you don't even speak. You just trust. You just remain. You just believe without needing proof. Can you imagine that? Believing without updates, trusting without evidence, praising with no visible reason. That's what separates shallow belief from true conviction. When your silence says more than your shout ever could, because it's rooted in deep relationship, not temporary results. Faith doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't scream to be heard. It just walks calmly, confidently, obediently. It walks when there's no map. It walks when there's no guarantee. Because it's not chasing outcomes. It's trusting God's character. And while others are panicking, complaining, or questioning, you're silent. Not because you don't care, but because you know you've already placed it in the right hands. And what God holds, He finishes. But here's the deeper layer. What happens when your silence is misunderstood? What do you do when you've chosen faith over reaction, and yet the world accuses you of weakness, of fear, of doing nothing? Now that takes another kind of strength. Let's uncover it together. There will be seasons when you are misunderstood, misjudged, misrepresented. People will look at your silence and assume weakness. They'll say you don't care. They'll say you're hiding. They'll say you're running from the moment. But the truth is, you're not running. You're rooted. You're not scared. You're still. You're not silent because of fear. You're silent because of focus. When God tells you to stay quiet, it's not because He wants you to shrink. It's because He wants to speak through your fruit, not your frustration. And fruit doesn't grow in noise. It grows in stillness. It grows in the unseen. And when the time is right, the evidence will speak louder than your defense ever could. But here's the test. Can you be okay with being misunderstood? Can you stay the course even when your name is in people's mouths and your silence becomes their gossip? Can you trust that the same God who gave you the vision will also guard your reputation? Because when you choose to stay quiet, you're not avoiding the fight. You're elevating above it. You're saying, let my results speak. You're saying, let my obedience talk louder than my emotions. You're saying, I don't need to defend what God has already confirmed. There's power in being misunderstood, because it's in those moments God gets the glory. When people can't figure you out, they have no choice but to watch what God does next. And when he moves, when he vindicates, when he opens that door or heals that wound or promotes you in the same place they tried to pull you down, that's when your silence becomes a sermon. So stay the course. Don't explain yourself. Don't waste your words trying to prove what only time and truth can reveal. Stay silent. Stay surrendered. Stay aligned. Because the next move is not yours, it's his. And when he moves, it won't just answer your critics, it'll silence every doubt in you. So keep walking, keep trusting, keep listening, because when he speaks, everything changes.